Welcome to Hunt the Fun Stuff, where we as a military family of 3 find the fun stuff wherever we are. There's a lot of information out there about overlanding. Everybody and their mother is overlanding, everybody's got opinions, but is overlanding for you or is it for your family? I'm going to list some pros and cons of what we have really enjoyed about overlanding and why it is the best fit for our family and why we choose to make it a huge part of our family vacations. Is overlanding right for you? There's a lot of information out there from a lot of different sources using a lot of different kinds of gear. So let's explore why overlanding might be the best choice for your family vacation. If you're new here, you might not know that we, as a family of 3, had a 31-foot travel trailer. It was a Forest River Flagstaff, like a 2006, and we paid about 10 grand for it. It was expensive for, I think, a family vacation, definitely not as expensive as a new camper. But one thing you might be considering about overlanding is the cost. Now, we preferred overlanding because our camper cost $10,000 more and was more complicated to use. And overall, we had about the same amount of fun tent camping as we did camper camping. Now, we obviously had to forego several amenities. There was no automatic hot water. There is no automatic heating system or AC. It's more complicated when it comes to cooking, but overall we found it wasn't that much more complicated to switch from camping in a camper to overlanding. So when we sold our camper after owning it for 3 years, we were relieved of many of the costs of keeping a camper up, like new tires. One of our tires popped, we had to get it replaced. The cost of storing the camper and getting the camper registration renewed and getting, all of the things that come with having an extra vehicle, you have that with the camper. The beauty of overlanding, if you don't have a trailer, is that it's all on your vehicle and there are no additional costs. You pay the upfront cost and that's it, which is pretty astounding when you think about it. So we were able to use the proceeds from selling our camper to buy our entire overlanding setup. And if you're curious as to how much the overlanding setup cost us, I am happy to post. I made a spreadsheet with everything and the budget option we considered and the splurge option and which one we chose and why. If you're interested in that kind of video, comment below. I'm happy to make it. I just want to know what's going to be helpful for you guys. When it comes to your vehicle, you don't have to buy a brand new off-road capable vehicle. Now, we have all seen them. The sexy Jeeps and 4Runners and Tacomas. I mean, they have so many gorgeous brand new vehicles. But if budget is an option for you, you can put a rooftop tent on anything. We've just met a couple at Big Bear Lake in California. They put a rooftop tent on a minivan. And they would use the bottom, the minivan portion, as their hangout living room type area. They set up a TV in there. They had, their cooking system was all downstairs. And when it's time to sleep, they would just go up in their rooftop tent. I've seen rooftop tents on Subarus. That's a really popular one. We've seen them on small SUVs, full-size trucks, vans. You can put a rooftop tent on practically any vehicle, which means you can put it on one you already own. Camping in an overlanding rig is easier to set up than we originally thought. So when we set up and tore down our camper, it was a bit complex, trying to figure out how to back everything in. And then you have to put the little tongue thing down and then all the stabilizers, there were a million stabilizers, plus you have to figure out in the camper, what are you gonna do with the food before the fridge cools down, because it takes forever for the fridge to cool down. So you had to pack a cooler anyway. You really had to bring your food with you. You did have some cookware and the way you were cooking is kind of easy in a camper because it's built in, but we still ended up packing an induction cooktop to take outside, and then we had to get cookware specifically for induction. So thankfully we already had some, we just used some from home, and we had dishes and silverware and whatnot. But truly, camping in the overlanding rig is faster to set up and tear down. Now, we are kind of in a rhythm now, so we can do it in probably 15 minutes, start to finish for everything. So we're able to leave the toddler in the truck, and then we get out. The first thing we usually do is make sure that the truck is level. That usually takes the longest time, trying to find out where we're gonna put the truck, how we're gonna make it level, and then where we want the door to come out. Once we pick our spot, it's really fast to set up. It probably takes us maybe 60 seconds to get the cover off and it popped up, and then a few more minutes to like get the poles all situated. But anyway, it doesn't take as long as our camper did, which is fantastic when you have young kids like we do, or if you have no patience like me. Another benefit to overlanding as opposed to other camping is that you're more mobile in an overlanding vehicle. If it's an overlanding vehicle, typically it means it is off-road capable, which means it's high clearance and all-wheel drive. Now, not all vehicles are those things, and I'll get to that later, but typically you can get to more places when you are overlanding. You're not confined to just hookup sites or just paved sites. You have more flexibility as to where you can go. Now, we have camped in all kinds of campgrounds. We have done the BLM land, which is a classic. We've done national forest free camping sites. We have paid to stay at state parks in RV slips. We've paid to stay at state parks in tent sites. There are lots of different options, and really when you're overlanding, all of them are an option for you. You could camp at a Bass Pro or at a Walmart parking lot if it came down to it. And when you're like camping in first come first serve sites, that might be a requirement. Being so mobile means that you don't have to pay for campsites. There are lots of free options for campsites. There's BLM land, which is Bureau Land Management land. There's National Forest land. There is private land. You could camp on that. There are parking lots. You could camp on that. There are so many more options when you are in an overlanding setup as opposed to a camper, because campers have a fixed length. They can be more complicated to move around. So my parents have a 39-foot travel trailer, and they're limited to where they can go. They can't visit many national parks because they have length restrictions. In an overlanding setup, there's almost nowhere you can't camp. In fact, when we were in Valley of the Gods, Utah, we were able to use some of the sites that were not flat or level. So campers would have had a hard time leveling out. Maybe it's debatable whether a camper probably would not have been able to camp at the site that we were at, which was fantastic because we had shade during most of the morning, so we could take a nice lazy morning as you're getting ready. But we would not have been able to get into that campsite or see that beautiful place had we had a camper. So it really does make your options more flexible. If you have an off-road capable vehicle, which means high clearance and all-wheel drive, you can get into places that other vehicles cannot. So when we are camping in our Ford F-150, it's lifted, I think, 3 inches. So it has a pretty high clearance, and it's obviously all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. So we were able to get past that initial bump where sedans get, and it seems like a lot of tent campers are using. A pro to taking your family with you overlanding is that it teaches your kids valuable skills. When you are out there in the wilderness and there's no one around, you have to figure out how to heat and cool yourself. You have to make sure that you are prepared clothing-wise. You have to learn some skills like building fires if you live in an area that you can do that. Cooking, I think I might have already said that. Gathering firewood. When you are out there in the middle of the wilderness with nothing better to do, it leads to more productive conversations with your kids about how they're doing in school or how they're doing with their friends or in sports. It also teaches them about our world and how we can do a better part in taking care of it and making sure that we are managing or stewarding our land well for the next generations, like picking up trash, or making sure that we're treating wildlife respectfully, making sure that we are putting our food away so that bears aren't attracted to this campsite, being a danger to others and also to themselves. We have such a responsibility to teach our kids, and when you're in a camping situation, you can teach multiple skills at once. Camping is a wonderful way to make memories with your kids, and overlanding could be the best way to do that. Most campsites are like this, but I have to say, overlanding is very dog friendly. There's nobody telling you where your dog can and can't be, if it needs to be on a leash, if you have to pick up the poop. Now granted, you probably still should, and you should keep aware of where your dog is because it can affect the wildlife in the area, so making sure that they have a bear bell or something on just to alert them and keep them safe. I mean, be responsible pet owners. But still, camping is incredibly dog friendly, so we have fewer logistics when we're about to leave. We know where the dog is going to be at all times. She is currently sleeping right next to me, and she loves being outside. She loves it when we go camping. She just runs around, goes crazy, defends us by the fireside, and she loves to go to bed early. So we usually put her up in the tent when we put Emma Grace down. Point is, camping and an overlanding setup is very dog friendly. I will say it is kind of challenging getting her up in the tent. So if your dog sleeps with you in the bed, a rooftop tent might be a bit challenging if they're bigger, if you can't carry them up and down the ladder. It's super awkward. It's doable. Our dog is 35 pounds and we lift her up and down every night and morning, and it's not a problem. But we also know that if we were to put a crate in the bed of the truck, which you absolutely can do, she would probably whine the whole time. She really likes to be with us. If you have a dog that's totally fine being on their own, then it would be fine. You just put them in the bed of the truck in their kennel, or you can put them in the cab of the truck, wherever they're going to be safe and warm. An unexpected pro that it can be a con too, is that our toddler doesn't get sleepy until it's dark, which in the summer takes a very long time. So usually her bedtime is 7 when we're camping. It can be closer to 8 or 9 because it's not dark out yet and her body isn't producing the melatonin needed for sleep. So that's a bit of a con, I will say. She also doesn't nap very well because she doesn't have the conditions set. Usually during the day, the rig is put away and we are out doing things. That's how we prefer to camp. But even if we are at camp, she doesn't usually nap very well in the tent. So it is kind of sleepy. But in the morning, when she wakes up early, as she always does, she likes to snuggle. And y'all, those snuggles. I remember by the time we were done with our summer trip and had moved to Fort Irwin, I was so used to the snuggles in the morning. Like, I was really dreading sleeping in a normal bed again. We don't co-sleep. She sleeps in her own room and is largely independent of us. And so to have that special occasion, like we're all sleeping in the same room in the morning, we just all get to snuggle as a family. That is pretty priceless, I have to say. In a camper, that wouldn't be possible, really. Most campers have a queen size bed, but with us having the Smittybilt XL, that's the Smittybilt, with us having this Smittybilt Overlander XL Gen 2, it's bigger than a king size bed. Nap time's over. It's bigger than a king size bed, so we can all sleep there with plenty of room for gear. Like, we have a Mr. Buddy heater up there. Anyway, if you're interested in our favorite gear as an overlanding family, also drop that in the comments below. We're happy to hear about it. We're happy to make that. Anything to help families get more into overlanding. This might be petty and it might not be necessary for a lot of you with older kids, but as a mom of a 2-year-old, being able to camp away from streets and traffic is fantastic. Emma Grace is wonderful, but she is a runner. and she doesn't always listen, as most children do. And so when she sees a street, sometimes she runs a little bit too close to it as she gets distracted. And being able to camp very far away from streets and other vehicles is a peace of mind factor for me. I feel like I can let her explore and watch her from a reasonable, safe distance, and guard her from any dangers that might be around her, but I don't have to worry about other people being a danger to my daughter. I also really like overlanding and camping dispersed. I prefer that to campsites because people aren't in your business. When you're camping in a campground, people are like watching you all day long. Mark and Trish from Keep Your Daydream, they discovered this about the overlanding setup. They did not enjoy this. So if you want to get a perspective of some people who overlanding really was not for them, even though they had a legit setup. They had like a teardrop camper built like a kitchen in the back, and they had the rooftop tent on the top. They had a nice setup, but it wasn't for them. So if you're curious about that, check out Mark and Trish on Keep Your Daydream. I think it was season 6, but you can check for yourself. They did a really good job. They do a fantastic job exploring other rigs. So if camping in a camper or seeing overlanding setups that didn't really work for people, if that's what you're looking for, then you should check them out.